The anime begins at Sika High School, where the protagonist, Ayuzawa Misaki, who is the student council president, is scolding some students for attending classes dressed poorly. The school is co-ed but used to be an all-boys school, which is why most of the students are male. However, Misaki worked hard to get where she is, being the only woman on the student council. As she patrols the hallways, she notices the same 3 students bothering a girl, so she puts them in their place. Later, she encounters Yusui Takumi, a guy known for breaking girls' hearts, and she asks him to stop. The male students don't like her because she is very strict, so one of them asks Takumi to also seduce the president to leave them alone, but he refuses. When Misaki returns home, she realizes she is short on money for some repairs, but she has to go straight to work as they need her there. At work, she is a waitress and feels it would be terrible if anyone from school found out. Luckily, when she steps out to take out the trash, Takumi passes by and sees her dressed as a waitress, immediately recognizing her. When she goes back inside, she wishes she could disappear. After her shift, Yusui is waiting for her because he wanted to confirm she was the president. At the park, he explains that he is there because of her family's financial issues and that she joined the institution because the tuition is cheaper. The young man seems to understand but appears to be plotting something. However, that night, Misaki does not want all her effort to go to waste. A few days later, the protagonist can't stop thinking about what happened and worries that Yusui might have talked about what he saw to the point of making her panic when she hears students talking about a waitress. At that moment, her friends Sakura and Shizuko arrive to ask for a favor since they need to move a heavy punching bag, so Misaki orders the boys from the club to do it. Sakura notices that Takumi is watching them, which makes Ayuzawa nervous, but she feels that since the young man is so popular, he might not be interested in what he saw. However, that night, Misaki is surprised to see her classmate at her work, but tries to stay calm and treats him like any other customer, ending up embarrassed, though her coworkers are smitten. The next day, Yusui asks another student what the protagonist was like before joining the school, and the student says she became demanding after a family issue. Meanwhile, the young man continues to visit Misaki at her job, and her coworkers believe he is there because he cares about her, although she doesn't want to believe it. The following day, Misaki finds out she is second on the student ranking, with Yusui in first place. Annoyed, she catches some students looking at illegal magazines, although they deny it and she asks them to treat girls the same way. Misaki then begins to review all the magazines found among various students to determine which ones will be allowed. Later, her fellow council member presents a problem with some money, so she must now handle it, but due to the pressure of her duties, she starts to get exhausted. At that moment, Yusui appears and tells her she needs to lighten her load since she almost faints, but she refuses his help. When Misaki is outside of work, she thinks about what Yusui said, but the 3 problematic students appear and see her dressed as a waitress, so they start bothering her. Takumi then shows up and tells them to leave the president alone, saying they shouldn't treat her poorly just because she is pretty. Respecting the young man, the students ran away. The next day, the protagonist wakes up well-rested and meets the young man to thank him. Yusui tells her that no one will know about her job because he asked the students to keep it a secret, saying it's his secret entertainment. However, he feels that nothing bad would happen if the school found out, as part-time work after classes isn't prohibited. Now understanding his purpose, she feels anxious because he seems to be ahead of her, so she promises to work hard to surpass him. She then thanks him for what he did for her, and unsure of what gift to give him, asks how she can repay him. The young man takes the opportunity to ask her to be his waitress for a day. On a new day, the male students are trying to get one of their friends out of the room where the president locked him up for bothering girls with his dancing, asking him to reflect on his actions. However, they can't get him out, so they ask Yusui for help. He believes the friend should also think about what he did, but when he hears that they plan to confront Misaki, he immediately gets the young man out. Later, the president is discussing the festival with the student council because she wants the school to be talked about so more girls will attend, but the boys don't fully agree. At that moment, the group of students arrives and starts suggesting ideas, having changed their minds. However, the president rejects all of them and, annoyed, demands good ideas, so the boys ask Takumi to speak on their behalf, and he is about to persuade Misaki. After classes, the president is at work, looking annoyed because Yusui insists on coming, which could damage the student council president's reputation. However, he doesn't want to end his entertainment and has no desire to reveal what is happening, even though the 3 students who used to bother her now enjoy seeing her. The next day at the school, they continue suggesting ideas for the festival, but the president rejects all of them from the boys. However, upon hearing from the girls, she agrees to set up a café, which annoys the boys. In the following days, all the students work on organizing and preparing everything for the festival, but Misaki gets upset with the boys as they try to implement their rejected ideas, leading her to shout at them. Meanwhile, the girls have the food ready and the protagonist gives them some recommendations, with the girls realizing she is good at it. During work, Misaki thinks her colleagues won't give up and are probably plotting something. Her boss starts to be pleased seeing the protagonist's wicked look, enjoying seeing her like that and having her work at her maid cafe. But the young woman doesn't understand anything her boss is saying. When she leaves, she feels she is being negative, but her thoughts are interrupted by Takumi, who tells her that if she continues treating the boys badly, it could backfire on her. On the day of the festival, the president asks everyone to do a good job, as it's an opportunity to attract more female students. At first, everything seems calm, so she decides to check on class 2-2. When she arrives, she is surprised to see that the cafe has been taken over by the problematic students, who have set up a cosplay cafe where most are dressed in minimal clothing, and Takumi is part of the group dressed as their leader. The young woman gets upset seeing them bothering the girls and guests, so she kicks everyone out and scolds the boys. They complain that she didn't listen to them, so they decide to leave, but Misaki notices there are issues in the cafe and kindly asks them to help. The protagonist decides to help the class since she has experience as a waitress, but makes a mistake by calling a young man master. Yushi arrives to help, and with him come the other students, managing to please all the guests. After finishing helping, the young woman allows the committee to enjoy the festival while she takes charge of welcoming the guests. Later, Misaki decides to stay alone, isolated from everything, but Takumi appears. She thanks him for his help and admits he was right since the boys rebelled. Yushi then asks if she can now admit that she is a waitress, and when she says the two are different, he holds her and says she is only his personal waitress, making the protagonist blush. A few days later, Maid Latte decides to organize a Little Sisters Day, where the maids dress up and act as younger sisters for their customers. However, Misaki struggles with this role since she has no experience being a younger sister, and her own younger sister is not a perfect example, as she is too cold and does not show any affection towards Misaki. The boss, Satsuki, tries to get Misaki to act sweet, and even her co-workers encourage her. Her co-worker, Hanoka, shows her how to do it, but Misaki and all the girls realize that she is not good at acting sweet, so the young woman gives up. After her shift, Satsuki allows Misaki to skip the event by swapping shifts and suggests she choose a color for color day. However, Takumi appears and gives his opinion, which Misaki does not like. During class, Takumi sees the three students discussing leaving a message for Misaki. When he grabs their drawing, he asks them what color would suit the girl. Meanwhile, Misaki arrives at the committee room and hears the boys talking about one of their sister's magazines before she enters. She quickly goes in, but the boys run away upon seeing prohibited magazines. When the young woman is alone with Yusui, she comments that she needs to figure out how to solve the problem since her workplace is not like any other. Later, the protagonist meets with her friends Sakura and Shizuko, who mention they have older siblings. She uses them as a reference as they are adorable in their own way, and she had never realized the calmness they bring her. In the following days, Misaki makes an effort to study and become a good younger sister, but Yusui is with her and tells her to use her younger sister as a reference. She confesses that her younger sister is not the right example, so he says he feels that she could be like her, and he confesses that if she were his younger sister, he would take photos of her every day, which Misaki does not like. When Little Sisters Day arrives, Misaki has finally perfected her role as a younger sister, which amazes the customers at least until Takumi arrives. He starts making constant jokes and several impossible requests, which causes Misaki to lose her composure and act like her usual self. However, when he tries to leave, Misaki realizes her mistake, acts sweetly, and begs Takumi not to go, which makes everyone at Maid Latte attracted to her. After her shift, Takumi asks her to thank him since he helped her captivate the customers, but she still feels embarrassed. For the young man, her natural way of being is enough. The next day at school, Takumi rejects a girl's confession by saying he is an otaku and has a preference for maids in cafes. He witnesses Misaki rescuing a student from a falling ladder. After realizing she hurt herself when stopping the ladder, he convinces her to go to the infirmary. Later, at Maid Latte, Yusui tells the boss that he found the perfect color for Misaki. On the day of the Maid Rangers event, Misaki decides to vent her frustration towards Takumi by dressing as the White Maid Ranger and confronting the trio of students. On a new day, Maid Latte receives a visit from Aoi, a famous internet idol who is also Satsuki's niece. Everyone is charmed by her fame, and they decide to introduce her to the staff. Aoi expresses her desire to work there, but the boss is upset and asks her to leave. However, Satsuki's niece mentions that she has been exiled from her home due to a fight with her father, so Aoi will stay with Satsuki for a while. This makes Aoi excited to stay, and she decides to try on the cafe uniform. Misaki asks her to change because it might confuse the customers, which greatly annoys Aoi. Nevertheless, she goes out to serve customers and immediately falls for Yusui, but is displeased to learn that he is involved with Misaki. At that moment, the boss learns that the chef cannot come to the cafe, so they need to find someone quickly. Takumi decides to take charge and impresses the girls with his own slightly modified version of omelette rice. Despite Aoi's attempts to get closer to him, she sees that Misaki is an obstacle. The next day, the three students are waiting for Misaki, but hear that Aoi has arrived. One of them recognizes her because he is in love with her. Aoi uses her charm to win everyone over, but does not understand why it doesn't work with Yusui, who arrives and rejects her in front of everyone. Later, Aoi seeks out Misaki to ignore her, intending to show her disdain. Seeing Misaki dressed poorly, Aoi asks how she won Takumi's affection despite not being feminine, which Misaki cannot answer, so she simply decides to leave. The next day, Aoi tries to get Takumi's attention, but he just ignores her. However, she is so persistent that the young man pushes her to the ground in the changing room, asking if she knows what that entails. At that moment, Misaki arrives, and upon seeing the situation, she pushes Takumi away and slaps Aoi for repeatedly trying to get attention, saying she doesn't need to go to such lengths to get noticed since she is already very pretty. Aoi then reveals that she is a boy, something Satsuki knew from the start. This surprises everyone except Takumi, who already knew and was therefore not impressed. Aoi explains that he ran away because his classmates teased him for liking feminine things and his father did not like him dressing as a girl. Misaki then convinces Aoi to return home, but not before he promises to win Takumi's affection. The next day, Aoi returns to Maid Latte and criticizes Misaki for not wearing girlish clothes, saying that as a girl, she should dress that way. Takumi then sets out to dress Aoi properly, and they go shopping. However, this does not work as Aoi witnesses the protagonist stopping a criminal and realizes that she is quite unusual. Still, Aoi decides to try to change her style, feeling it is a waste. On the day of her shift, Misaki arrives dressed very femininely and feels embarrassed about it. However, Aoi is annoyed since he was the one who dressed her, but the girls are delighted to see her, and Takumi, who is also present, comments that she looks even cuter when embarrassed. During the protagonist's work hours, Misaki calls her colleague to check on the progress of the documents they need to submit. However, he tells her that he can't complete them as there are too many, and it's taking him longer. Misaki says she will review them later, but then she hears the other committee members are wasting time watching videos, so she says she will punish them later. At that moment, Misaki sees that Takumi is once again in the staff room and asks him to leave since he entered without permission. However, Satsuki explains that Takumi came to fetch some items and tells Misaki about a group of targeting cosplay cafes, for which she has various protective items. Misaki says she doesn't need them as she can take care of herself, although Takumi seems a bit concerned. The next day, the three students learn about the situation and worry about the president, even though they know she is strong and will be fine. Meanwhile, Misaki gives her committee members a lesson, as she said she would punish them. At that moment, she sees Takumi there, who just watches and then leaves, which annoys her. After a few days, the president catches up and completes all the paperwork, helping her colleague. When she leaves the school, she sees that Sakura is still there, so she decides to accompany her to the train station because it's dangerous for her to be alone. At that moment, Takumi appears and repeats the same thing to the protagonist, making her nervous, and she asks him to leave her alone. At work, Misaki serves her customers while being watched by Yusui, who just bothers her, but she chooses to ignore him. However, the young man notices that two men are watching the president and trying to get her attention. At the end of her shift, Misaki offers to stay and wait for the boss, sending her coworkers home since it is late, but when the place is closed, a man grabs her from behind. She tries to free herself since he is very strong, and when she manages to do so, she realizes it is actually Takumi. She now wants to give him a lesson for overstepping, but he tells her that the back door was open, so she should be more careful as she is also a woman. When Yusui leaves the store, he sees some men running away suspiciously. The next day, Misaki is happy that Takumi is not at Maid Latte bothering her. However, while she works, some customers talk about how she is perfect to catch, so that night Misaki has to stay to guard the place until the boss returns. She is then cornered by two men who are regular customers. At that moment, Yusui hears noises at Maid Latte and heads there to rescue Misaki. Meanwhile, the students have restrained Misaki with handcuffs and gagged her with tape, thinking that the real Misaki is a submissive woman. Just as Takumi is about to break the window to get in, he and the men are surprised when the protagonist frees herself from the handcuffs and reveals the real Misaki, an extremely angry woman who proceeds to beat them using her entertainment. When Yusui finally arrives, he can only laugh at what he sees, but the men say they just wanted to be punished by her. Takumi makes it clear that Misaki is his personal maid, which annoys the girl, and she punishes him too. When everything is over, the police take the criminals away, and Misaki thanks Takumi for his help. At that moment, the boss arrives and faints upon seeing the broken window. A few days later, Misaki tells Aowa what happened, but the boy returns to Maid Latte to show everyone the photos he took of the protagonist in her dress. Yushi is there, and upon seeing the photos, he asks the boy to send them to him. On a new day, Misaki has acquired a group of students, the Yumayama quintuplets, who ask to become her disciples. This worries her a bit since they follow her everywhere and she is seen by everyone at school, but they admire her so much that they want to be like their president. However, upon arriving at the train station, the group begins to suspect that the girl has a part-time job, so they decide to follow her to learn more about her. Misaki opposes this, and thanks to the 3 students, they manage to get the group to leave her alone. But when the protagonist is about to leave, her 3 admirers decide to accompany her, which prompts the new group to do the same. Misaki then runs away, and Yushi appears at just the right moment, helping her escape. As days pass, the group of followers continues trying to learn more about their role model, the student council president. She tries to avoid them whenever she has to go to work. Takumi helps her evade them, although after several attempts, he asks if it might be better to tell them the truth, as they might accept it. Misaki knows, however, that their role model is the student council president, not a maid. During work, the protagonist remains distracted despite working, as she does not want her followers to see her like this, since they wouldn't learn anything from it. At that moment, the 3 students arrive at Maid Latte, saying they have accumulated points to challenge Misaki and get a photo with her. Despite their efforts, they lose to her, though they are not ready to give up. Yusui, however, manages to get a photo of her since he beats her. That day, her boss tells her they will have a bunny day event. The next day, Misaki teaches her followers some self-defense. Afterward, she heads to the rooftop to think about her situation but finds Takumi there. She says she is considering telling the boys the truth as she doesn't like lying, even though she's unsure if they will be disappointed. During their discussion, the young man shows her a photo of her dressed as a maid, but accidentally Misaki causes Yushi to drop the photo towards the Yumayama brothers. She begins to panic as it wasn't the way she wanted them to find out, so she has to retrieve it. Takumi decides to jump to catch it, but she refuses to let him. He explains why he wants to do it, and unexpectedly, Takumi kisses her and confesses his feelings. After this, he jumps off the roof. Desperate, she climbs down quickly and feels relieved to see he's unharmed, though she calls him an for worrying her. The brothers hear the commotion by the pool and see that the young man is injured, so they wonder what happened. Misaki decides to confess everything, but thanks to Yushi's acting, the brothers think the student council president is Takumi's bodyguard. The boy then convinces the group of followers to stop following Misaki, thus keeping her secret safe. In the hospital, Misaki visits Yushi with a bouquet of flowers, which he appreciates, but she leaves annoyed when the young man asks her to take care of him in her maid outfit. After what happened during work hours, Misaki continues to think about the rooftop incident, which keeps her unsettled and unable to concentrate, even causing her to break a glass. This makes her colleagues notice that something is wrong, so they offer their support and ask her to tell them what's going on when she's ready. At the end of her shift, Takumi appears, surprising her since he was discharged from the hospital, but she can't stop thinking about what happened. She brushes him off and asks him to leave while she runs away, leaving the young man distressed. When the protagonist is alone, she receives a phone call from her friend Sakura. Later, Misaki arrives with her friends Sakura and Shizuko, who called her because there's a fight involving 2 Sika students. When the protagonist sees the boys, she asks them to stop fighting. They are scared of her but refuse to stop. At that moment, a student from the prestigious Miyabigoka Academy says he was beaten and that they should apologize, mentioning that Sika Institute is full of savages, which further angers the 2 boys. Misaki orders them to apologize to avoid more problems, but the Miyabigoka students end up leaving. The next day, the protagonist is working in her classroom when Takumi interrupts her, making her nervous. Then one of her classmates arrives, and the young man decides to help, but Yushi ends up kissing him. This makes the president realize that Takumi only kisses for fun, though Takumi leaves the place disappointed. Later, Misaki takes the 2 Sika students who started the fight to Miyabigoka Academy to apologize, with Yusui accompanying them. Misaki learns that the fight started when one of the Miyabigoka students, Hirofumi Kogane, spoke ill of their interest in chess and began to provoke them, which led to the fight. When they finally arrive, Kogane expects the Sika students to apologize, but Misaki tells Hirofumi that her classmates will apologize only after he does, since he started everything by calling them flies and provoking them. The young man refuses, but after seeing the chessboard, he proposes a match. If he wins, they will have to apologize. Since neither side knows how to play, Takumi offers to compete, and, if he wins, demands that Hirofumi accept that their president is a butterfly instead of a fly. Ultimately, Yushi wins and the Sika students go home happy, finding the humiliation of the Miyabigoka student amusing, but they thank their president. The next day, the Miyabigoka Student Council, led by its president Tora Igarashi, arrives at Sika. Everyone is concerned, fearing there might be trouble, but upon meeting with Erika's student council members, Tora apologizes to Misaki for Hirofumi's behavior, explaining that they have decided to expel him. The girl feels that expulsion is too extreme, so she requests that he not be expelled and also apologizes for her students' involvement in the incident. The Miyabegauka president sees that Misaki is very strict and admits that their institute used to be problematic, but thanks to her, it now has a better reputation. He offers Misaki a scholarship to Miyabegauka Academy and a position on their council. The protagonist is impressed by Tora's gentlemanly behavior, unaware that he is actually a lecherous person who has taken an interest in her. At Maid Latte, the cafe hosts a special Ladies' Day event where the maids dress as handsome men. Misaki is a big hit with the female customers, enjoying dressing as a man and receiving compliments. However, when they are alone, Yusi reminds her that she is still a girl, which leads her to say that he is confusing her. Meanwhile, Tora learns from one of his associates that he has been following Misaki's part-time job. After the incident, Misaki receives a visit from Maki, the vice president of the Miyabegauka Student Council, along with other members. They bring gifts from Tora, who wants her to join his academy. Although Misaki refuses to accept the gifts, she has no alternative. Maki, aiming to persuade her to join, offers her a scholarship for herself and her sister. When the protagonist returns to class, her friends ask what she plans to do, considering the possibility that she might go to the Miyabegauka Academy and end up with its president. That afternoon, she overheard some students suggesting that it would be a good idea for her to leave, as they could then do whatever they wanted. However, when she leaves, the two students who caused the issue defend Misaki, knowing she is thinking of them. As days passed, the protagonist cannot stop thinking about what she should do. She even asks her sister if she would go to the prestigious academy if given the opportunity, to which her sister agrees. The next day, Sakura calls Misaki to invite her to a concert, but the protagonist says she will be busy as she is at Miyabegauka Academy. Later, Sakura and Shizuko try to call their friend again. When she doesn't answer, they worry because Sika Institute wouldn't be what it is today without Misaki. Although they want the best for her, they decide to go against the decision. At that moment, Yusi overhears everything. The girls manage to gather the student council and their fans to go to Miyabegauka and convince Misaki not to transfer. Meanwhile, in the Miyabegauka student council room, Misaki is about to give her answer to Tora when one of her classmates accidentally spills drinks on her uniform, forcing her to clean up in the shower. When she tries to find her uniform, she discovers it has been taken for cleaning, leaving her with no choice but to wear a maid uniform. It is at this point that Tora reveals his true nature, showing that he knows about her part-time job. She tries to escape, but the boys' friends block the exits, trapping them both inside the student council room. Tora then asserts that Misaki must now obey him, believing she is there to accept his offer and trying to attract her attention by throwing money at her, assuming she is like the other women interested in him. He grabs her to prevent her from escaping. The protagonist disappoints him by revealing that she came to the academy to reject his offer because she has no intention of leaving Sika. However, Tora restrains her and attempts to kiss her forcefully. Unable to escape, she calls out Yusi's name, who arrives just in time. He claims to have defeated the guards and apologizes for his actions. Takumi holds Misaki and says Tora has no right to touch her, and then takes her away. Before leaving, the protagonist tells Tora that if he wants to talk to her as the president of the Sika Student Council, he can do so anytime, though she is very upset about what happened. Afterwards, Misaki thanks Yusi for saving her, although he is pleased she called for help. Once everything is over, the protagonist sees that her friends and Sika classmates are waiting for her, not wanting her to leave, which makes her very happy to know she is needed. In this new chapter, Takumi narrates a story based on a version of Momotaro. One morning, Grandma Sakura and Grandpa Takemura are collecting food when a large peach suddenly appears. They decide to eat it, but just as they are about to cut it, the fruit splits open and out comes Momotaro, who is actually Misaki. She says she wants to defeat the demon terrorizing the villages and the girls, so before setting off on her adventure, Grandma Sakura gives her food for the journey. On the way, she encounters 3 trapped animals, the trio of losers she ends up saving. However, when they try to steal from her, she captures them again as punishment. At that moment, Yusi appears dressed as a wizard. He says he actually planned to eat them, but the protagonist doesn't refuse. The trio begs for mercy, promising to take her to the village where the demon was last seen in exchange for being saved from being eaten. Thus, they all set off together as a group. They eventually arrive at Sika village, now a stinking wasteland filled with men driven mad and their women captured, leaving no one to do the housework. Momotaro urges them to come to their senses and clean up since they could face problems when the women return. However, they don't believe this is possible, talking about a great demon who took them and whom they cannot fight. Later, the team plans to cross the ocean to find the demon. However, Momotaro saves a turtle, and the 3 animals remember that if you save a turtle, it will take you to a palace under the ocean where the beautiful Otoine resides. She will serve you and give you a gift when you leave. so they decide to go with the turtle but realize they can't swim, ending up traveling with Momotaro and Yusui. At night, the group encounters a princess who gives them a card to exchange, but after one of the animals gets lost, the bird returns with a large pirate ship led by Tora, who wants to destroy them. He captures Momotaro, prompting Yusui to intervene and destroy the ship with a rocket launcher. The next day, the group arrives at the island. The disguise themselves to get in, while Misaki decides to enter without warning, disguised as a maid. There, they find the Sika women in maid uniforms in a grand palace. The protagonist is shocked to discover that Yusui is actually the demon. She decides to confront him and save the girls, but they start saying it was their choice to be there because they didn't like being with the men of Sika village who were dirty and unpleasant. Yusui confirms this and says he did not them. However, he now asks Misaki to escape with him. The narrator concludes the story by stating that Misaki and Yusui became a couple, despite Misaki's protests about the ending, while the trio of animals meets unfortunate fates. In reality, the whole story is a dream Misaki is having while napping in the student council room, as Takumi is the one telling the tale. On a new day, Sakura and Shizuko go to the concert Sakura had been so eager to attend. However, Sakura feels like the lead singer of the band keeps staring at her. After the concert, she wonders if it was just her imagination, but it's not, as the singer gives her a flower. The next day, he invites Misaki to spend the day with the band, asking her to bring friends and also hoping that Misaki will meet his crush. Yusui learns about this and starts questioning Misaki while organizing papers, feeling a bit jealous. He tells her that it's difficult to see her in a group of friends, which is why she wants to go, hoping to make new friends. That night, Misaki plans to listen to the band's CD since her friend gave her one to familiarize herself with their music before meeting them in person. While looking at a magazine of her sisters, she realizes that the band is actually famous. Over the next few days, Misaki spends time with her friends and notices that Sakura is very happy and excited about the band, so she decides to support her friend even though Shizuko seems troubled. The next day, the trio of losers is working and saving up to visit Maid Latte and see their beloved Misaki. However, when they hear some customers arriving, they are surprised to find that it's the president and her friends. Meanwhile, Sakura is nervous as the day has finally arrived. When the trio starts fighting over who will take the order, the band arrives, led by Kuga, the lead vocalist. The other members introduce themselves as Shu, Q, and William. As the meeting progresses, Misaki feels overwhelmed as she can't keep up with Sakura, and Shizuko is in her own world. Despite this, she tries to support her friend because she is happy. Sakura even confesses her feelings to the band leader, but Kuga keeps his eyes on Misaki. When Kuga and Ku go to the bathroom, Kuga reveals he's not interested in Sakura. He likes Misaki and only invited Sakura to keep his fans engaged. The trio of losers overhears this and starts to get upset until they see someone familiar. Back at the gathering, Kuga starts showing interest in Misaki and completely ignores Sakura. He even invites Misaki to his recital, which she tries to decline because she is busy, but he insists, wanting to see her there. When Misaki is in the bathroom, she begins to feel uncomfortable as it seems Kuga only talks to her, which makes her feel bad for her friend. When she exits the bathroom, she finds Kuga outside with his bandmate Kyo. Kuga attempts to flirt with her and even confesses that he has no feelings for Sakura, only inviting her to keep her and other fans around. This shocks Misaki and leaves her speechless. Q asks his friend to stop, but Kuga continues flirting until he gets too close. At that moment, Yusui appears disguised as a waiter and intervenes, saying he'll take their order. Kao starts to believe Yusui is Misaki's boyfriend, which she denies, but it works as the band members leave her alone. Takumi admits he took the uniform from one of the waiters. Misaki confesses she doesn't know what to do in this situation as she wanted her friend to enjoy herself. Back at the table, Sakura tries to keep the conversation going with Kuga, but he seems bored and only asks her to convince her friend to attend the concert, which saddens Sakura. When Misaki arrives, Kuga starts flirting with her again. Sakura asks Misaki to go to the concert, hoping it would make Kuga happy. However, the flirting turns into insults towards Misaki, as Kuga believes she likes bad boys and living a bad life. Sakura quickly stands up and asks him to stop, saying she can't allow him to speak like that about her friend. Fed up with his behavior, Misaki grabs Kuga by the tie and tells him she won't trust Sakura to someone like him. After leaving the cafe, Shizuko scolds Misaki for causing a scene and possibly upsetting many customers. Later, Sakura apologizes to Misaki, who comforts her with a pat on the head and hopes that one day Sakura will find someone who truly loves her. Sakura responds that she will look for someone who gives her head parts. Meanwhile, in the cafe, Ko starts scolding Kuga for his behavior while his friends wonder why the waiters are looking at them so intensely. Later, as Misaki heads home, she thinks about Sakura's words and recalls how Takumi had given her head parts, making her blush. One morning, Takumi encounters a lady who has dropped her apples, so he decides to help her. The lady realizes that he is a student from Sika Institute and starts chatting with him, and Takumi notices that she is a very open person. When they finally arrive at her house, Yusui discovers that the lady is Misaki's mother. She invites him inside, and the boy begins to see traces of his classmate's childhood. Later, Yusui enjoys a delicious apple while conversing with Misaki's mother and her sister. At that moment, Misaki arrives and sees that her house is being cleaned, and when she goes into the living room and sees her family with Takumi, she becomes nervous and wonders what he is doing at her house. Her mother learns that they already know each other, but Misaki, after hearing what happened, decides to ask Takumi to leave. After leaving the house, Sakura and Shizuko see Misaki and Yusui leaving hand in hand and try to follow them, thinking they are dating, but they lose sight of them. Meanwhile, the couple is at the park, and Takumi asks Misaki if she really believes he came to her house just to deceive her mother. Misaki thinks it's possible since her mother is easily deceived, but she still thanks him for his help. Takumi starts teasing Misaki because he now knows that she eats apples in the shape of bunnies and wants to learn more of her secrets, but Misaki forbids him from coming to her house. The next day, Sakura and Shizuko meet with Misaki and use the opportunity to ask if she is dating Yusui, as they saw them leaving her house hand in hand. Misaki decides to tell them the truth, explaining that she only helped her mother, which was a coincidence, although they believed they could become a couple in the future. While the girls enjoy their lunch, they discuss that they don't know much about Takumi, feeling he might be really wealthy despite attending their institute. Sakura then proposes finding his address by infiltrating the school's list, but Shizuko is against this idea as it's illegal. Meanwhile, Yusui is on the school rooftop, overhearing everything. Later, Misaki is at work when Sakura calls her, asking where she is since they need her because they decided to follow Takumi, who is currently at Maid Latte. Misaki becomes anxious, knowing it's related to her job, but when her boss sees her situation, she gives her the day off. Meanwhile, Yusui waits for Misaki, although the trio of losers is also there, having saved up for this moment, but fortunately, they won't see her since she has the day off. When Misaki leaves, she encounters her friends, who tell her they decided to follow Yusui since they couldn't find his address. They ask Misaki to join them, and just then, Takumi exits Maid Latte, prompting them to follow him. Along the way, Yusui enters a sports club, attracting everyone's attention, but Misaki tries not to look at him, feeling nervous. Later, the young man goes into a tailor shop where the girls are shocked by the high prices of the suits, and Sakura starts to suspect that her hunches might be correct. Next, he enters a café where Sakura suspects he might be waiting for someone, making Misaki feel jealous. She decides to leave, and her friends follow her. Misaki says she was against following him from the start, but at that moment, Takumi runs out of the place. Later, Takumi visits many places, leaving the girls exhausted, and by the end of the night, they decide to stop following him and go home. At that moment, Misaki is left alone but sees Yusui staying behind to care for an abandoned cat, which scratches him. She starts laughing at him, and the young man confesses that he knew they were following him, giving her a paper with his address, pleased to know that she finally showed interest in him. Misaki is annoyed, as she knew they were following him but had behaved differently. That night, Misaki looks at the young man's address, unsure of what to do, while Yusui is at his apartment with the cat he rescued. At Sika Institute, the sports festival is about to take place, and all the students are excited since each competition has its own prize, including a kiss from Sakura, who was chosen through a vote. However, Sakura is very upset as she didn't want this, so Misaki decides to win all the competitions to help her friend. As the festival begins, Misaki wins many of the running events, which upsets some students because she is winning most of the prizes. However, the organizers cannot do anything about it as there are no rules against it. The girls tell their president that it's not necessary for her to win everything, as she might get tired, but Misaki wants to do her best to ensure the comfort of the girls. During the final race of the day, the announcer mentions that it is an obstacle race with the prize being a kiss from Sakura. A student named Goda excitedly declares that he will win the prize, though he might cheat to secure first place. Yusui hears this, but the president also aims to win the prize and save her friend. Misaki and Goda fight for first place, and the young man pushes her, trying to take her out of the race. As Misaki is about to fall into the pool, Takumi manages to save her and asks her to let him finish the race. When Goda thinks he's about to win, Yusui appears and overtakes Misaki. Fortunately for her, Goda loses as Takumi secures first place and the president comes in second. However, Yusui is not interested in the prize and gives it to Misaki, who thanks him as she won't have to kiss a stranger. Meanwhile, the trio of losers is in the sewing room making a maid outfit for Misaki. Upon hearing noises, they decide to hide it in a box. In the schoolyard, the students gather for a costume race, and Misaki is unsure if she should participate. Shizuko steps forward and says she will join since she can't stand watching the president do everything fighting while they don't help. She reassures Misaki not to worry about not being athletic. Still, Misaki decides to compete as she promised to support the girls. Before the race begins, the announcer explains the rules while Yusui follows Misaki to the finish line as he is also participating. Misaki hopes not to get a maid costume to keep her secret safe. Then, Takemura appears and tells the students he is excited to participate as it's his first time competing. When the race starts, the president runs with all her might but notices the other participants are far behind. Takumi calls her over to choose a bag with her costume. Misaki grabs one at random and goes to change before the others arrive. Upon reaching the changing room, she discovers her costume is a maid outfit, the same one the trio of losers made. This makes her nervous, but Yusui tells her it's perfect for her since no costume is ideal. This doesn't make Misaki feel better, and she throws her bag, hitting Takemura. Since her partner is in a hurry, he takes her costume and continues the race. The pair can see students laughing at Takemura, who is dressed as a woman. This upsets Misaki, and she tries to help him, but Yusui stops her because the race is important to him and she could be disqualified for not wearing the costume. Therefore, when Takemura is on the ground, embarrassed, the pair arrives and helps him continue the race without fear. Later, Yusui is treating Misaki's injuries in the infirmary, wondering how she can put herself through so much. However, she is only thinking about the costume race and how to change the designs to make people more enthusiastic about participating. Yusui is pleased to see her thinking about improvements and gives her a kiss on the hand, making her blush. Meanwhile, the trio of losers finally finds their dress destroyed, which makes them sad and overwhelmed. On a new day, a student from Seisen Institute named Aratake is giving a lesson to some boys who were looking at him badly. They acknowledge that heat is the strongest, so Aratake now knows it is time to see the legendary White Tornado Beast, better known as Shirokawa Naoya, one of the members of the trio of losers. Later, Seisen students visit Sika Institute and see the trio of losers leaving very happily. Upon recognizing Naoya, they decide to follow them. However, the trio enters Maid Latte, and Aratake is greatly disappointed to see what the White Beast has become. Afterward, the trio leaves the cafe and talks about wanting to defeat Misaki in the games. At that moment, Takemura appears dressed as a woman and asks for help, explaining that some classmates made him dress this way to trick his mother, but he just wants to go home and change. The trio, however, refuses to help him, saying the disguise looks good on him. Then Aratake arrives and mistakes Takemura for Naoya's girlfriend, deciding to the vice president and asking the young man to come and rescue her. Meanwhile, the students who forced the vice president to dress as a woman wonder where he is. Misaki arrives and they flee the scene, but she finds Takemura's clothes and does not realize they belong to him. At that moment, Yusui arrives and accuses her of taking someone's clothes. Later, as the couple leaves the institute, they run into the trio of losers who explain what happened. Misaki admits she didn't realize there were so many at Seisen Institute. When they arrive, she feels it looks quite normal, but no one knows where Takemura is. Fortunately, Aoi, who studies there, appears and explains that there have always been many at that institute, with several incidents in the past, but they have dispersed recently, so they are not often seen. Yusui feels it is not the time to talk and that they should focus on finding Takemura. Meanwhile, at the secret base, Takemura wonders if anyone is around until Aratake appears and unties him, but asks him not to escape as he plans to lure Naoya. However, the vice president tries to confess he is not a woman and even attempts to prove it, but Aratake doesn't believe him and asks him to stay put. After their conversation, the Sika students learn about the hideout and head there, but Misaki feels they shouldn't go in their uniforms as it might cause problems. That afternoon, the Sika Institute group decides to film a movie to get into character as delinquents and rescue Takemura from the Seisen students. However, their acting is interrupted by the protagonist's sister, their boss, Sakura, Shizuko, and Misaki's fan club, making Aoi start to think she is cursed due to her bad luck. Meanwhile, at the secret hideout, Aratake's companions begin to doubt that Naoya will show up and start arguing until Aratake's best friend tells them they shouldn't speak poorly of Naoya, who saved him, although he admits Naoya is not a good leader. Both end up fighting. Later, the Sika group finally enters the hideout, and Yusui, Aoi, and Misaki decide to follow the trio of losers, knowing the place well. They arrive at the main room, where Naoya and his friend are pleased as it brings back old memories. However, Aratake decides to attack Naoya from behind since he was waiting for him, but the White Beast stops him, and they start to fight. It turns out to be a friendly fight, helping them vent their frustrations. Naoya recognizes the boy he saved long ago, acknowledges that he has grown stronger, which makes Aratake cry. When everything is over, the trio of losers presents Misaki as their greatest leader and asks everyone to show respect, which the Seisen secondary students do. However, the Sika students forget that they came to rescue Takemura. The next day, Misaki tells Yukimura that she overheard some girls talking about their school and noticed how it has changed since it used to have a bad reputation. She recalls that in a few days, many students from other schools will visit their high school, so they need to plan something to attract more girls. However, a suspicious young man is listening to their conversation. Later, the student council meets to gather suggestions for the visitation day. At that moment, Yusui arrives with a wet shirt and asks Misaki for a towel. Yukimura, feeling embarrassed, hands over his towel and asks him to use it. Yusui explains that he got wet because he broke a water pipe at the school, and now it needs to be fixed. Once Yusui leaves, Misaki is irritated as Yukimura blushes seeing Yusui, and she gets even more upset when she finds that the finance book has gone missing. Outside the room is the suspicious boy again, named Kinu Saudaru. The next day, the school seems to start off as a normal, calm day, but everything changes when Misaki sees a poorly dressed boy. Later, at the committee meeting, one of the members apologizes to the president for not finding the finance book, but the girl managed to make another one with the data she remembered and recalled what was done the previous day. However, Misaki then realizes that one of the committee members threw an important list in the trash, which her colleague finds strange as she always takes her work seriously. Meanwhile, Kanu heads to the broadcasting room, and soon everyone in the school begins to hear a noise. Misaki arrives at the room, and the student claims to be in charge when he is not. The protagonist asks him to stop broadcasting the noise because it makes her sleepy. However, the boy manages to hypnotize her to make her do whatever he wants, so he can make her look bad in front of the teachers and no longer be president of the student council. Yushi passes by and sees a suspicious boy leaving the room. Later, Misaki wakes up in the nurse's office because Yushi rescued her when he found her in the broadcasting room. The young man notices that she is acting strangely, as if she were drunk, which amuses him a bit, but he tries to take care of her as she starts to behave inappropriately. Meanwhile, Kanu is in the room where he hypnotized the president, but when he sees she is not there, he apologizes to the teacher, feeling frustrated because his plan failed. Later, Yushi manages to get Misaki to sleep but sees that the young man was spying on them. The next day, the protagonist is in the council room where all the members notice she does not look well. She begins to remember what happened to her and how Yushi rescued her and showed her how she was acting. She tries to recall who she met in the broadcasting room. Meanwhile, Yushi uses Yukimura as bait to catch Kanu, knowing that he was responsible for what happened to Misaki. The student does not deny it but takes the opportunity to try to hypnotize Takumi and make him hate the president, though he fails. Later, Yushi arrives at the committee room to find Misaki, but Yukimura tells him that she left as soon as she discovered who hypnotized her, which makes the young man run off to look for her. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrives very upset at Kanu's room to confront him. They go to a private place where she tells him that she discovered he wanted to tarnish her image and prevent more girls from entering the school because he hates them. However, Kanu hypnotizes her again, and when Yushi arrives, the student tells him that if Misaki falls asleep within 24 hours, she will hate Takumi, wishing them a good relationship. At the end of the classes, Takumi follows the protagonist everywhere as it is his duty to take care of her and make sure she does not sleep, as he does not want her to hate him. Misaki objects to having him by her side, claiming she hated him from the start. But that night, when the girl is at home, Yushi confesses that he loves her. The next day, Misaki is surprised to see Yushi outside her house, as he spent the whole night there to take care of her. At school, the president cannot keep her eyes open, so Yukimura offers her blueberry supplements to stay awake. When she sees that she has not taken them, he decides to go look for them. However, Kanu is there and intercepts the student, who ends up delivering sleeping pills to Misaki. Despite this, she tries to stay awake. After many hours, Misaki can no longer endure and wonders if she will forget what happened since she never thanked the young man. As she is about to fall asleep, Takumi confesses that no matter what happens, he will try to make her fall in love with him every day. At that moment, Kanu arrives, saying that there are only 5 minutes left and it seems he is going to win. After what happened, Kanu believes he has won the game since he thinks Misaki has fallen asleep with only 5 minutes left. However, this is not the case as the protagonist couldn't sleep after hearing Yushi's annoying words. When the time is up, she tells him she will make him pay for what he did. The next day, the students learn they will receive visits from other institutions, which excites them as they look forward to meeting new people. However, the trio of losers is not very happy because they will not be needed. Meanwhile, Misaki asks the girls to help her set up a cafe at the school to make the visitors, especially the girls, feel comfortable. The girls are pleased and start planning the decor, but the president informs them that if they need help, Kanu will be there to assist them as part of his punishment. Later, the group of girls begins working, but Kanu tries to escape from the cafe, even attempting to use hypnosis, though he fails because Misaki is keeping an eye on him. The girl wonders why the boy behaves oddly around a girl. Finally, the day of the visit arrives. Many students are happy and excited to see the various tours, while the president tries to maintain a good image by communicating the things the students could do. Everything seems to be going well until Misaki notices the sports club is having trouble. At that moment, she sees Yusui and scolds him for being there unnecessarily, but takes the opportunity to assign him a task to help the clubs, which are enthusiastic and waiting for him. Meanwhile, at the cafe, the girls try to persuade Kanu to help them serve the customers since he is part of the team and has assisted them. They treat him very kindly and try to make him feel comfortable, but he feels by them and refuses to serve the customers. Later, the protagonist takes a group of girls on a tour of various parts of the school, while Yusui is used to represent each sports club so that students want to join them. At the end of the tour, Misaki takes the group of girls to the cafe, where they are charmed, especially by seeing the girls dressed as waitresses. Although the president is not too pleased, thanks to Shizuko, she realizes that the cafe's atmosphere is what she wants. At that moment, she sees Kanu dressed as a rabbit, which surprises her. When they are alone, the young man starts to vent, saying he had no alternative. Misaki notices that he has made progress because now he looks people in the eyes when he speaks. She realizes he must not be as weak and fragile as she thought, so she suggests he stop running away. Later, Yusui tells the clubs that he is tired of representing all the teams. Meanwhile, at the cafe, a girl mentions that she likes Sika, but is afraid to join because there are many boys and she fears them. Kanu overhears this conversation, and it reminds him of a childhood moment when his father told him that girls are fragile and can be broken, as happened to his mother. This is why he tries to avoid girls and never had contact with them until Sakura took him by the arm and brought him to ask him for a favor. After the president hears this from the student, she takes Kanu and asks him if he is afraid, which makes the young man make eye contact and be kind. She then casts a spell so that he will no longer be afraid of men. Although he ends up laughing, the girls find him endearing. At the end of the visit, Misaki thanks Kanu and tells him that he will no longer be punished as he helped a lot and made a great effort, although the young man wanted to tell her that she did well too. Later, Yusui takes the protagonist to rest as she had a tiring day. After their conversation, she thanks him with a pat on the head for also helping with the clubs, which makes Takumi blush. When summer vacation arrives, the trio of losers heads happily to Maid Latte. However, upon arrival, they see a sign indicating it will be closed, leaving the group sad as they won't see Misaki. This is because all the cafe staff will be spending their vacation at the beach, thanks to an invitation from the boss's sister, Satsuki, named Nagisa. When Nagisa arrives, she greets them, and the girls are surprised to find she is a younger version of their boss. The girls then visit their lodging, which has a beautiful view of the sea. Aoi is also there and starts bothering them, but he is there at his father's order, as he had been kicked out of the house again. The protagonist then realizes Yusui is there as well, having been invited by the maid lat boss. Later, the girls decide to change and enjoy the beach, but are surprised to see that Misaki is wearing a school swimsuit, which disappoints Takumi, who returns to the cabin, ignoring all the beach girls who try to invite him. Later, everyone gathers at the beach house, where Nagisa mentions that her business isn't doing well due to a lack of customers. The girls realize what is missing. Waitresses like it Maid Latte. They decide to change and go out to find customers, while Aoi tries to infiltrate with them but is prohibited by Nagisa and sent to clean the bathrooms. As time passes, Misaki observes her friends but decides to help Aoi with cleaning, wanting to contribute in some way. However, Aoi bothers her by suggesting she is insecure about wearing a swimsuit, even though he blushes when Misaki takes his place and sends him to rest. The protagonist notices that the place begins to fill with customers and decides to join her friends, so Satsuki gives her a swimsuit. When Misaki is changing, Yusui appears and surprises her. Seeing her dressed in a swimsuit and determined to go out, he stops her and kisses her on the back, causing her to come out dressed in normal clothes as she didn't want anyone to see the kiss. That night, the group is happy as they attracted many customers and celebrate around a barbecue. Satsuki gives Misaki tickets to the hot springs for working hard during their vacation, which makes the protagonist happy. However, her joy ends when she hears a scary story from her friend Honoko, which frightens Misaki and makes her doubt going to the hot springs. Despite her concerns, her friends are not interested in the story and decide to go. Misaki remembers that her friends will see the kiss, so she has no choice but to stay and miss the girls' night out. Later, Yusui goes to Misaki's dorm and finds her depressed for not being able to go. She blames him and says she won't forgive him, but then realizes she has the tickets. She quickly leaves to bring them despite Takumi asking if she isn't afraid of the story. On the way, the protagonist runs towards the location but starts remembering the story. She insists on arriving so her friends won't have to pay a lot, but at one point she gets exhausted and feels lost. She then sees an approaching light and to her surprise, it's Takumi who followed her. He apologizes for scaring her, but she collapses from exhaustion. The young man hugs her until she calms down, but Aoi then appears and they both release each other. Upon arrival, Satsuki tells Misaki that the tickets were extra. Meanwhile, Yushi takes Aoi for a bath. On the second day of vacation, the protagonist wakes up after having gone to bed late, but at that moment Yushi appears, and Misaki recalls discovering his secret fear and how she managed to control him, which makes her lose control. However, at that moment, the couple hears an argument between Aoi and Nagisa, where she forbids him from dressing as a girl, but proposes a mixed volleyball competition with the condition that if they win, he can dress as he wishes. But since it's a mixed competition, he needs to find a female partner, and to his misfortune, Nagisa refuses because of age limits. Later, Aoi is frustrated because finding a partner will be difficult, but Misaki appears and offers to participate in the sport as she is determined to help him with the competition. When her friends learn of this, they are happy, although they inform the protagonist that the winners will become the beach princes and must take photos with people. Yushi feels insecure about this and asks the girl not to participate as it's unnecessary, but Misaki wants to help Aoi, and after this, Nagisa sees who is her nephew's partner. The day of the competition arrives, and everyone is eagerly awaiting it, including the Maid girls who wonder where their friends are. They are surprised and scared, just like everyone else, when they see Aoi and Misaki arriving with high energy and determination to win. However, when the competitions start, the pair notice that Yushi is also there with Erika, one of the Maid girls, as he says he wants to win, which surprises Misaki as she didn't expect him to be their competitor. During the competition, Aoi and Misaki manage to defeat all their rivals aggressively, causing fear among them, while all the girls are charmed by Yushi. Eventually, the two pairs reach the finals and must face each other. The protagonist notices that Yushi is distant with her, while he hears some spectators say they want Misaki to win because she seems to be single. When the competition starts, Misaki mistakenly believes Yushi won't go against them, but she is wrong. Despite her and Aoi's efforts, they lose the first set against Yushi and Erika. Misaki doesn't understand why Yushi is doing this since she knows Aoi needs to win, so she unintentionally shouts at Takumi, questioning why he wants to be their enemy, which embarrasses her in front of everyone. Despite this, Yushi continues to play to win, which leads Misaki to attempt to save the ball but nearly injures herself. Takumi saves her, though he gets hurt in the process. That night, Misaki tries to apologize to Yushi, feeling guilty for causing his injury. However, he tells her she should be celebrating their victory. She explains that she didn't want to win by disqualifying her opponent. Yushi confesses that he wanted to win because he didn't want Misaki to become the beach princess and fulfill the boys' desires while they took photos, but Misaki felt it was more important to please Aoi. Yushi's words move her, and they are about to kiss when fireworks interrupt them. Returning to the others, Satsuki suggests they take a group photo since they only have one day left of vacation. However, all the girls start teasing Misaki about Yushi, which makes her nervous. Aoi holds her hand, and Takumi does the same, causing the protagonist to look bad in the photo. Meanwhile, the trio of losers remains outside Maid Latte, feeling sad for spending their vacation without seeing the president. On a new school day, the student council is gathered when Yukimura arrives with several documents, accompanied by Kano. Kano mentions that he has lost some of his shyness because spending time with the vice president is like being around girls, which annoys Yukimura, who says he will become a great man and that people won't think of him that way again. Later, Misaki follows Yushi because she wants to return the favor for all the times he saved her. The young man asks her again to be his maid for a day, which makes her blush and say that he's just taking advantage of her, but he just likes to tease her. That night at Maid Latte, they celebrate Temple Maid Day. One of the three losers opens his fortune cookie and reads that he might lose something important. However, the cafe's manager feels he is overreacting, as she only wrote the fortunes without knowing anything. Misaki takes a fortune and says that they must repay their favors. At that moment, Maki Kanade, the vice president of the Miyabagaoka Student Council, arrives. The maids try to tell him that the place is closed, but he surprises them by saying he is there for business as he wants to buy the place. Maki informs them that his family, which runs a powerful restaurant business, wants to buy Maid Latte to open a cafe with butlers. This leaves Satsuki speechless, as the current owner does not want to sell and asks them to consider the offer since he wants to demolish the place and build a new one. The girls object, but then Tora appears to support his friend and colleague. When the boys leave, Misaki asks Tora if they are only doing this because she is there, but he just holds her and comments on her interesting attire. Yushi then appears and holds Misaki, but the president of Miyabagaoka lets them know that he is willing to help his friend with his plans and that if they want to stop him, they could go to the auditions, though no women are accepted. The next day, the Maid girls attend the auditions and Misaki and Subaru dress as men to demonstrate that their store has a great staff. The protagonist is upset and just wants to save the cafe, feeling guilty for what is happening. Before the auditions begin, the girls are trapped in the crowd as too many guys showed up due to the high registration fee. At that moment, Maki appears speaking from a helicopter, which surprises everyone. He explains that before starting, everyone must run a race and only the first 50 to arrive will pass. Subaru begins to feel ill as she is not good at running, and the protagonist encourages her, saying she will push her along. However, the vice president explains that the race is in pairs and one must carry the other. Satsuki asks the girls not to give up, feeling responsible for asking for such a challenge, but Misaki is determined to do it. As the race starts, the maid lot girls cheer on their friends, while many applicants fall behind. The girls continue despite Subaru feeling embarrassed for Misaki, but she insists she is fine. They also notice two very strange masked boys running. Fortunately, the girls finish in 38th place, which seems like a strong position. Misaki notices that Kaichou and Yukimura are present and tries not to be recognized. Later, all the qualifiers undergo various tests to advance, but many of them, including the girls, are exhausted. They refuse to give up, even when one task is to change outfits in a minute, revealing that Subaru is a girl. The pair of losers try to help and accuse the masked boys of being imposters as well. When the masks are removed, it turns out to be Yusui and Aoi. The judges, Maki and Tora, disqualify Aoi for being underage and Subaru for being a woman. Due to what happened, the judges propose that Yusui and Misaki continue the competition as long as they prove they are men, which is not difficult for the young man. The protagonist demonstrates this with an act involving Takumi, who declares that he is a man because he is flat-chested, allowing them to remain in the competition. After what happened, the second round follows, where they must prepare a high-class tea table in just a few minutes. Misaki quickly tries to set it up, but Yusui stops her, saying he will handle it. Calmly and confidently, he gives orders to Misaki, and to her surprise, he sets up a magnificent tea table that also impresses the judges. After this, they are allowed to enjoy what each one has prepared. However, Misaki leaves the place only to get rid of the losers who are bothering her. Tora follows her, and she has no choice but to enter the men's restroom to avoid suspicion, while Yukimura and Kaichou approach the table and greet Yusui, convinced it is him. However, the young man pretends to be another person named Yusui, causing the boys to leave. When Misaki returns, she tells Yusui what happened. He asks if she feels bad about what he said about her being flat, which upsets her. He grabs her but whispers in her ear that he will punish her, making everyone watch. Meanwhile, Subaru and Aoi return with the others. The boy mentions that he did it because he doesn't want the maid lottie to be taken away, as he apparently plans to inherit it. For the third round, the judges assign numbers to each pair as they need to simulate a real job, and they will be the judges. At that moment, Yukimura approaches Yusui to speak with him, so the protagonist tries to avoid them and hide. When the protagonist opens her eyes, she realizes she is on top of Takumi, who saved her, but she sees that the young man is unconscious. Misaki tries to talk to Yusui, but he wakes up at that moment and with a smile says he is fine, although the other staff members ask if he needs medical attention, which he denies. However, the protagonist notices he is injured, as his face changes when she touches his arm. Finally, the last round begins, with Yukimura being one of the first to start and showing great nervousness. When it's Yusui and Misaki's turn, she does all the heavy work to prevent her partner from straining or injuring himself further. Maki notices this and asks why she does it. Takumi pretends that he is there to perform another task, which is playing the violin, satisfying the judge. However, as time passes, Misaki sees that the young man can't go on any longer, so she decides to stop Yusui and reveal the truth. Maki is upset and questions why she forced him to stop working in front of the master when he wants to continue. However, she asks if he would allow his workers to keep working until they collapse, as in her store they try to support each other to create a better environment and dedicate their hearts to their work and clients. The pair decides to leave the competition since Yusui needs attention, and Satsuki runs to find a taxi. Before leaving, Misaki apologizes for failing, but her boss is proud of her and wants her always by her side. Meanwhile, Maki is moved by the girl's words and feels that she should create an environment where customers enjoy themselves, rather than disregarding her workers. Tora tells her she can do whatever she wants since there are many places where she can open her cafe. The next day, everything returns to normal as Maki decides not to buy the maid lot and leave the girls in peace, which makes Satsuki happy, and she says it is all thanks to Misaki. Meanwhile, the protagonist takes the entire day off to visit Yusui, who has been discharged from the hospital, planning to take care of him. There, she apologizes for becoming dependent on him, to which Yusui says he feels the same way about her, as he considers her perfect for him, which makes the protagonist blush. On a new day, Yukimura feels embarrassed as he tells Kanu about the tough days he's had because of his younger sister. At that moment, a group of children appears, and the vice president recognizes his sister, but she introduces him to her friends as her neighbor, which makes the boy sad. When the others leave, the girl says that a princess like her should have a brother worthy of being called a prince, and Yukimura is not. At that moment, Misaki and Yusui arrive, which captivates the girl as she feels Takumi is a true prince. The next day, Yukimura asks the president and Yusui if the young man could play the role of a prince on a date with his younger sister. The president refuses, saying it's inappropriate, but the vice president is desperate. He explains that Ruri had always been a princess and he her prince until one day she told him he was not worthy. However, learning that he is friends with a real prince made him happy, and he now wants to regain the role of brother through the date. Misaki is moved and agrees, although Yusui doesn't seem very happy. On the day of the date, Ruri waits for her prince while Misaki, Kanu, and Yukimura are hiding, observing the girl and the date. At that moment, Takumi appears dressed as a prince, which surprises everyone as he looks authentic. Aoi arrives and tells the hidden boys that he helped him dress like that. However, Yusui seems a bit annoyed by how hyperactive the girl is, so he holds her, scaring the others. He simply asks her what she wants to do, and they later go to a flower garden, where Takumi keeps looking at the hidden group, and Aoi assumes he is looking at Misaki. At that moment, Ruri falls and is about to cry, but Yusui lifts her up and acts like a true hero. Yukimura then says that now his sister will think he is not worthy of being her brother, which worries Misaki, who says they need to do something to prevent this. Later, Kanu is used to act as a villain and interfere with the date, but he fails and runs away in fear. Aoi then has another plan and uses the president to play the princess and try to make Yusui look bad. Yusui realizes this and they try to act like a couple, but Ruri notices what they're planning and runs away, calling her brother selfish. However, the girl enters a restaurant and a shelf is about to fall on her. Luckily, Yusui stops it, but Yukimura saves his little sister by protecting her. Despite this, Ruri is upset with him, saying he is mean for trying to ruin her date, but the vice president stops her and tells her that a princess should not behave that way. She then apologizes to everyone, including the restaurant owners. In the end, Misaki apologizes to the girl, but she knows that Yusui was not her prince, as it seems she has someone else in mind, so she happily leaves with her brother, hoping that her Prince Charming will appear another time. Later, Aoi is at a park, dressed as a woman to film a video of herself, but is attacked by some. Fortunately, Kanu and Yukimura show up and deal with them. At that moment, the boy takes the opportunity to have the guys help her with the video, although they claim not to know her despite her being an idol, and she finds the boys useless. Then the trio of losers appears, and Aoi again asks them for help, and together they manage to film the video. However, she is not satisfied and asks for more things for the boys to bring her. When it ends, she shows that she is enjoying the moment, surprising everyone with a new side of her, but she denies it and accidentally drops the camera's memory card. A happens to be there and she jumps to retrieve it, but Misaki appears and saves it. Although the others feel that it wasn't the fault since it seemed Aoi jumped by herself, the boys say they enjoy the day with her, and the boy also feels the same. They all decide to search for the memory card, which has actually ended up in Yusui's hands. After several days, some students sigh over a new student who apparently is very handsome, while the trio of losers is excited as they are about to see Misaki. Meanwhile, at Sika Institute, the president asks all the clubs to clean up as the places, including theirs, stink. However, the students refuse, so Yukimura steps in and sweetly asks them to clean, promising them rice balls as a reward. Later, the vice president regrets his request, realizing it will be complicated to feed so many students. The protagonist has a plan to help, and at that moment, Yusui arrives, having been absent from school for a few days to recover. He thanks Misaki, but she ignores him, while Yukimura asks the young man what food he prefers, and Takumi replies cooked rice, which makes him pause since it's the food Misaki prepared for him. Kano, who is also there, notices the situation. Later, the president meets with a teacher to discuss the cleaning of the clubs, as she wants to prepare food for the students. Meanwhile, in the council room, Yukimura tells Kanu that he will have to stay at the council longer so he can leave without him. At that moment, Misaki arrives, and the young man asks her if she is now dating Yusui since she made him food and took care of him. Annoyed, she says she only did it because she owed him favors, which makes the boy uncomfortable. Then, Kanu arrives at the lockers and sees Takumi receiving a letter, even asking him to go in his place, but he refuses, still afraid of women. Before Yusui leaves, Kanu tells him he should choose just one since that way he would stop getting love declarations, but Takumi finds it annoying to take things seriously. That night, the protagonist tries to prepare rice balls but keeps thinking about Yusui, which distracts her and causes her to mess up everything. Her sister arrives and gives her some advice, which helps a lot. The next day, the council is ready to start cooking, with Yukimura bringing an extra helper, Kanu. As they begin cooking, Kanu asks the vice president how he views the relationship between the president and Yusui. Yukimura says they are great and that he sees them as real heroes and likes the president, but this is misinterpreted and he tries to correct it. Misaki scolds him for talking while they are working. Meanwhile, Yusui is on the school rooftop observing the cleaning but sees the new student eating grass, which confuses him. The student council finally finishes cooking, but they are surprised by the president's rice balls. She ends up being angry when all the club students arrive hungry, rush in, and eat everything without mercy, ignoring the president's rice balls, which makes Misaki mad. Fearing her anger, everyone runs away. When the protagonist returns, she sees that her teammates cleaned up the place before leaving, but her food is still there. When she tries it, she feels that her practice was in vain and ends up falling asleep. Later, Yusui arrives and stays by her side, while Kanu watches and doesn't understand why Takumi doesn't confess his feelings. The next day, the protagonist returns to class, though she is puzzled about how her rice balls disappeared. At that moment, Yusui appears, but their conversation is interrupted by the new student falling from the second floor. He is unharmed but surprises the couple. Later, the new student introduces himself as Shintani Hinata, and it's strange how he has a great ambition for food. The president denies him food during classes and also during their tour of the institute, confiscating his food when she leaves. Later, the protagonist meets Yusui, who says he spent a lot of time with a new student. Sakura and Shizuku then arrive quickly, having cornered Hinata. The girls arrive thinking there will be a fight but are mistaken, as everyone is just giving food away if they guess what they have hidden. Hinata then explains that he used to be overweight, but after his parents passed away and he moved in with his grandfather, he started eating vegetables and lost weight. Now he lives alone and returned to the city to find his first love named Misaki. After this confession, the protagonist starts to remember that she had a friend when she was younger who promised to always be with her. Her friends are excited to think that she is the first love of the boy. Later, Hinata climbs a tree to call for her by name, even though no student knows the president's name is Misaki. When the protagonist arrives and asks him to come down, the young man trips and falls. At that moment, Misaki calls him by his nickname, and he recovers and runs to hug her, leaving everyone surprised while Yusui watches from afar. The next day, Sika Institute goes on a mountain excursion where the trio of losers tells everyone what they heard about the trip from various students, so they are very excited. However, upon arrival, they find themselves only working, which disappoints and frustrates them. Still, the president asks everyone, including Hinata, to keep working or face punishment. At that moment, Yukimura asks for help because Yusui won't leave him alone. Everyone then runs away from Misaki's anger, but Takumi confesses he was actually jealous in a corner, which makes Misaki blush and Hinata see it from afar. Later, the monks send the boys to meditate at the waterfalls, and they have a tough time, except for Hinata, who enjoys it fully. He then approaches Yusui after seeing him talking with the protagonist, but only tells him he's great. Yukimura stops him to avoid any trouble. Meanwhile, the girls are tasked with cooking, which makes them happy. Sakura takes the opportunity to ask Misaki about Hinata, wanting to know if their relationship is progressing. This intrigues all the girls, but the president says Hinata is just a childhood friend, and she doesn't have time for such things because she needs to focus on the institute. Once everyone finishes their tasks, the monks serve the students their meals, but none are satisfied. Hinata enjoys his food and quickly asks for more, but he can't have it. Later, some boys talk about how he must have gone in search of more food. Misaki overhears this and decides to look for him, with Yusui also present. The protagonist finds him in the storage room and first scolds him for causing trouble. At that moment, a monk asks if anyone is in the room. Not seeing or hearing anything as the boys are hiding, he ends up locking the doors, trapping them inside. Due to this, Hinata starts losing control as he is locked up with a girl and begins thinking about the manga he was reading. He tries to find things that might help but mainly holds the girl's hand. She just wants to find a way out, but he tells her to see him as a guy, though he later regrets it out of embarrassment. Yusui then opens the door, takes Misaki, and says that if she really wants, he will act like a guy. On the third night, they announce that everything is going well, but the girls are worried because they heard that all the girls are in danger on the fourth and final day. But Misaki is distracted as Yusui and Hinata argue over her, ending up scolded. The next day, everyone leaves the temple to go eat, but the boys look so exhausted they seem like zombies. When they arrive, the girls start changing, causing the boys to lose control. Sakura explains that according to the elders, when boys work, study, meditate, and eat little for a long time, they lose control and start following them. Later, the girls are separated from the boys, though it is said that the teachers usually create barricades to keep them apart. However, due to the rain, the river is overflowing, and the teachers won't have time to set it up, so the boys are loose. This causes Misaki to go out in the rain to stop them, instructing the girls to defend themselves just in case. The protagonist finally encounters the boys, who don't look very well, and sees that Hinata is with them. He says he was just there to see her. At that moment, the boys run and capture the president, but Hinata gets angry and deals with them. He and Yusui then work together to stop the boys from approaching the girls, though a few escape. Yusui appears and stops them, causing everyone to flee. This makes Hinata admit that Takumi is amazing, leading to a small argument between them that makes the protagonist laugh. Finally, Misaki returns to the girls, who thank her for what she did. She then notices that Yusui has not left yet. When she goes to see him, he tells her not to think that he will get along well with Hinata because he won't. He admits that she has been avoiding the new student's advances and asks if she has feelings for him. Misaki confesses that he is just a childhood friend and troublesome boy, while Takumi is even more troublesome. The young man smiles, knowing from her blushing that she meant what she said, and starts to approach her but ends up collapsing from exhaustion. On a new day, Maid Lottie is hosting a sweets competition where winning customers will receive a grand prize. Erica tells the protagonist that she is distressed because she promised a date to a regular customer who comes to see her often, and she hopes he doesn't win. Misaki assures her that she will handle it. The next day, Misaki arrives at the cafe dressed as a man to compete, but Yusui and Erica spot her. With Erica trying to distract Yusui, the competition begins and the customers must eat various types of sweets prepared by Yusui. The trio of losers are the first to be disqualified. When the regular customer loses, Erica is happy, but Misaki is too exhausted to continue. Later, Satsuki announces the prizes: cookies, a meal voucher, and a photo with the maid of their choice. Hinata is asked which maid he would like to be photographed with. He doesn't mind much, but seeing Misaki's name, he decides to choose her because she shares the same name as his beloved. This surprises the protagonist, and despite her efforts, she can't win, so she leaves the place upset. Her colleague recognizes her, while the other maids ask Erica why Misaki participated in the contest. Later, the protagonist is at the park. Yusui appears and suggests she lie down and use him as a pillow to feel better. Though she initially refuses, she ends up accepting. Yusui starts teasing her by saying he wants to become a piggy, making her blush and lie back down. Yusui takes this opportunity to kiss her, but she doesn't notice. The next day, Yusui tells the protagonist that the maid lot girls found out she participated, which surprises her. Just then, Hinata arrives and starts asking questions because she resembled the person who competed. Misaki denies everything. However, Hinata invites Misaki to a meal at Maid Latte, as he won that prize, leaving her unsure of what to say. A few days later, Hinata and Misaki arrive at Maid Latte, accompanied by Yusui, who is not pleased that he is also part of their outing. However, the protagonist recalls the plan she made with her boss and Erica to prevent her colleague from discovering that she works there. As the date starts, the boys sit together, but Yusui and Hinata begin to argue, which upsets Misaki and makes her ask them to stop, causing the new boy to blush. The protagonist then realizes that Hinata isn't in uniform. Hinata explains that he stained his school uniform and is now wearing his work uniform because he works at a gas station, surprising the girl. He invites her to see his work to see his masculine side, but she is already familiar with it, though he has changed just like her. Hinata insists he remains sweet and hardworking, but immediately asks the protagonist where she works, as he has heard something similar. She simply stands up and leaves the table. While Hinata tells Yusui about his memories of when his parents passed away, he saw everyone passing by and crying, but he didn't. Thanks to Misaki, he was able to release all his pent-up emotions and cried with all his strength. Even though she may not remember it, he does, and since then, she has been his favorite person. Hearing this, Takumi asks if it's a declaration of Later, Misaki is ready to reveal the truth as she doesn't want to lie to Hinata. She comes out dressed as a maid to serve him, but he panics and starts speaking loudly, asking why she never told him. At that moment, Yusui, dressed as a butler, arrives to take her away. Alone, the protagonist thanks Takumi for playing along, but Hinata follows them and tells the girl that she looks very good dressed like that. Yusui then takes the protagonist and warns Hinata that he could get into trouble if he approaches her, declaring on both sides. The next day, Hinata visits Misaki and the student council to hang out, which annoys her, and she kicks him out, as well as Yusui, who often visits the place since she says the council room isn't a place for fun. Later, the protagonist scolds the students and Hinata for having food in class. One of the students talks about work, which makes the girl nervous because she remembers revealing the truth to Hinata. However, he tells her that her secret is safe with him. That night, Hinata calls his grandparents to tell them he found Misaki and that they attend the same school. Meanwhile, the protagonist is at work, and her boss informs her that they will have an anime cosplay day, giving her a large number of episodes and volumes of an anime they will be representing. Later, Hinata leaves work and finds some fruit on the way, which he decides to eat, but many others fall, which actually belong to the protagonist's mother. Later, Misaki and her sister are watching anime when suddenly their mother arrives with Hinata, whom the girl immediately recognizes. During dinner, Hinata starts saying that the younger sister has changed, but she immediately asks him if he is still in love with Misaki, causing both of them to blush. Although the girl says that when they were little, he couldn't stop looking at Misaki, the president still asks what he was doing in her neighborhood. He explains that he was just looking for the cherry tree he fell from and promised to follow the protagonist for the rest of his life, but she assures him that wasn't the case since he said that in the hospital and she didn't expect him to actually follow her. Finally, the cosplay day arrives at Maid Latte, and the trio of losers is ready to enter and are warmly welcomed by all the maids and Misaki, making them excited. During a small break, Aoi wants to go out, but his aunt forbids it. The protagonist arrives and unconsciously responds to the boy with a spell, which is due to her staying up late watching the series, surprising Aoi. At that moment, Yusui arrives, but this time as a customer. Misaki goes out to attend to him, but Aoi and the others notice that he doesn't seem as cheerful as usual, which they think is because of the problem with Hinata. Hinata arrives, and the three losers are annoyed to see him, even though he is only there to see Misaki. However, he notices Yusui is also there, which makes the atmosphere tense. The protagonist then goes out to give special drinks to the losers, where she must guess who drank the bad one. If they win, there's a prize. However, despite being excited, they lose because one of them can't handle the drink. Later, the protagonist suggests casting a spell on Hinata. At that moment, Yusui decides to leave, which makes the girl sad. Hinata asks her to cast a seeker spell to find the cherry tree. At the end of the day, Aoi is upset with Satsuki for not letting him go out despite helping with the costumes. His aunt asks if he has no friends to spend the day with, making him angry. When he sees Misaki arriving, he says that Yusui probably doesn't have friends either. The protagonist starts to think but is left speechless when Aoi asks her what Yusui means to her. Later, the protagonist takes out the trash from the store, thinking about that question, but Yusui is there and starts teasing her. He then asks her to answer the last question she was asked. She doesn't know what to say and tries to hit him, but he says that's what she does when she can't speak the truth. He holds her and says he will show her his feelings and simply hugs her, casting a spell to make her tell the truth. She doesn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, Hinata finds the cherry tree, saying it's destiny. On a new day, Hinata wakes up after dreaming about Misaki and their childhoods. When he arrives at school, all the students wonder why he isn't afraid of the president, as she always scolds him, but he doesn't see it that way. Later, the boys leave class and see the girl cleaning the mess made by the sports clubs. They decide to run away, thinking they see a demonic figure cleaning, though Hinata's perception of her is different. He tells them that she is still the same person he knew and realizes that she is the one for him. He then recalls living with his grandparents and being popular among girls in middle school because he was a good athlete, but his thoughts were always on Misaki, despite the confessions and gifts he received. The next day, Sakura tells Misaki that her favorite group will perform at the Yuusaki School Cultural Festival, but the protagonist gets upset because the band's leader was mean to her. Shizuku explains that, according to her friend, he has changed a lot since his injury because she visited him in the hospital. This bothers Misaki, but she has no choice. However, Yusui appears and invites himself to go with the girls. Later at Maid Latte, Erika pretends to be a fortune teller and begins reading fortunes for the trio of losers, predicting they have no future with Misaki, which disappoints them. Hinata arrives, wanting to become a regular customer, but upon seeing Erika, he decides to have his fortune read. Erika tells him that if he persists, he might get something, but when Yusui hears this, he asks Erika to read his future with Misaki. Nervously, Erika says they have no future together as they are incompatible, but if they want to be together, they will have to overcome a significant obstacle, which discourages both of them. At the end of the day, Takumi waits for the protagonist after work since he saw Hinata wandering around, and he seems disheartened because of what Erika said. The protagonist asks without thinking if he would easily separate from her because of what Erika said, but she immediately blushes and the young man smiles at her, though Hinata overhears their conversation. The next day, the president arrives at class and sees that the clubs have made a mess again, so she starts cleaning angrily. Hinata arrives and, remembering their conversation, decides to help her, although he blushes when he sees her smile and accidentally ends up wetting the entire area, including themselves. They have to change, but Yusui arrives and gives Misaki his shirt to cover up on the way. The new student feels frustrated seeing this situation and Takumi leaving with her. Later, Hinata recalls when he was with his friends, who were surprised to hear he was going to find an old love. He describes her as kind, loving, and good, and his friends tell him to be prepared for anything, even if she already has a boyfriend by the time he finds her. Alone in a tree, he says he is prepared but finds it very difficult. A few days later, the girls and Yusui attend the festival where the band is performing and are surprised to see the large crowd. However, when the band appears, Sakura gets hit, but the leader rescues her and tells them to be nice to each other. This makes the protagonist think that maybe he has changed since the last time she saw him. Meanwhile, the girls are swept away by the crowd, leaving Sakura and Shizuku separated. They ask Misaki to have fun with Yusui while they are gone, which makes her nervous and blush as they will be alone together. After the events, Misaki and Yusui get trapped in the crowd and decide to leave. Once they are alone, she notices that the young man is carrying a lot of food, which surprises her as it was difficult to buy anything. In reality, many girls had approached him offering sweets and food, but when the girls come closer again, the couple runs away. Finally alone, Misaki is upset about what happened, although Yusui calms her by giving her something to eat. She starts to think that it feels like a date, and Yusui's comment makes her nervous, as if he can read her mind, and she ends up leaving. Later, the couple arrives at an activity where they need to overcome several obstacles to determine if they are suited for each other. The only rule is that they must not let go of each other's hands. Yusui agrees to participate, still thinking about what Erika had said. As they enter, Yusui gives Misaki a necklace and asks her to hold his hand, which she does, though she is embarrassed. Meanwhile, Shizuku regrets not going with the protagonist because they have to wait for several hours for the band, and all she does is scold Sakura, who doesn't want to lose her place. As the challenges begin, the first one requires a participant to eat a bowl of ramen using only one hand. Misaki is chosen through rock, paper, scissors. She is eager to do it, but she didn't expect Yusui to feed her. After this, they continue with various games, and many students are frightened by their fierce attitudes, making them seem like an unusual couple. Shizuku begins to lose control from waiting so long and doesn't understand the obsession, while Sakura explains that it's an uncontrollable love and that it's unstoppable. At the end of the contest, the couple wins a large prize for a special celebration after the festival. They both admit they had a good time, but Yusui lets go of Misaki's hand, which surprises her, and he asks her to fetch his backpack. After a while, Sakura and Shizuku finally enjoy the concert, and the couple decides to join them, but they are separated by the large crowd and can't find them. Afterwards, Sakura calls Misaki to talk, but since she can't, Shizuku explains that the band invited them to hang out after the concert. At that moment, the protagonist runs into the leader in disguise as he doesn't want to be recognized by fans. Misaki hangs up, annoyed with the guy, and immediately asks about his intentions with Sakura. She also tries to confirm that he has changed. The young man admits that her gaze is intimidating but confesses that Sakura is the only one who sees him for who he is. Misaki feels that he is serious about her friend, but he stops her, saying that he is protective and asks her to continue with her boyfriend. The protagonist confesses that they are not together, which leads the guy to tease her for being not only intimidating but also slow. Later, Misaki says she has finished her work and Yusui suggests they leave, but she wants to stay longer at the festival and spend more time with him. The young man is surprised by her request but agrees, as they have a special celebration. Later, they are dressed in kimonos, the attire provided for enjoying the fireworks. When they are alone, Misaki feels a bit nervous, so Yusui suggests they go somewhere else, but she takes the opportunity to ask if he is holding back, putting both of them in an awkward situation since neither wants to confess their feelings. When Yusui decides to leave, Misaki admits that she has been holding back for a long time, wanting to hold his hand. However, his behavior confuses her, as he sometimes seems to want her and other times just wants to bother her. He immediately takes her face in his hands, and they kiss under the fireworks. Finally, Yusui confesses his love for her, but she says she hates him, although the young man knows what she really meant.